many traps can you lay in a single interview? Apparently a lot, because when CNN's Dana Bash tried to corner Tulsi Gabbard over her endorsement of Donald Trump, there were some unspoken truths that were finally said by Tulsi, enough to make the network uncomfortable. So there is so much I need to tell you, especially in light of Donald Trump's debate with Kamala Harris, but subscribe to the channel and watch this clip before we get into it.
Former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, thank you so much for being here. Vice President Harris's campaign manager released a memo this morning saying they expect former President Trump to be a, quote, formidable opponent on the debate stage. Do you think Kamala Harris will be a formidable opponent as well? And how is the former president preparing to debate her?
Yeah, I think Kamala Harris has a lot of experience. She is not to be underestimated. President Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris have very different records. This is a unique situation where we have two candidates who have served at the highest offices in the land. President Trump, 4 years as president. Kamala Harris, now almost 4 years as vice president, working alongside President Biden. And so this will be an opportunity for voters to look at and compare and contrast those records. If I can be helpful to President Trump in any way, it really is just in sharing the experience that I had with her on that debate stage in 2020, and frankly, helping to point out some ways that Kamala Harris has already shown that she is trying to move away from her record, move away from her positions, and how that contradicts the positions and statements that she is making now that she is the Democratic nominee.
And it is a remarkable situation in that you are a Democrat who debated her in a Democratic primary, and now you are helping the Republican nominee to debate her.
Now remember, Tulsi Gabbard was roped in by Donald Trump himself to prepare for the debate against Kamala Harris, and I think you'll agree how one key advice from her helped Donald Trump the most, and that is to push for specificity. It's incredible how disarming that simple strategy is for Kamala Harris in a debate, and we saw it in full action when Tulsi went head straight for Kamala Harris in the Democratic primary back in 2020, but the truth is that a lack of specificity can also become one of Kamala's greatest strengths in a debate, allowing her to simply roll past important questions if she's not offered pushback from the moderator. Here's a snippet of that from the debate and a perfect example of what Donald Trump learned to counter. The question was simple: are Americans better off under your administration than they were 4 years ago? Kamala Harris's completely irrelevant response will make you roll your eyes.
When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people.
Obviously, since the debate format didn't allow open mics from Donald Trump to chime in, because we would have seen him interject with a quip as soon as she started talking, that's why one of Tulsi Gabbard's foremost advice to Trump was simply don't let her get away with not answering for the record. Here's what Tulsi Gabbard wrote on X just a few hours before the debate, quote, Kamala Harris is being trained like an actress, lights, camera, memorize lines, so she can win the debate and act her way through the election. But we're not choosing the lead in a movie, we're choosing our commander-in-chief. As citizens and voters, we need to recognize our solemn responsibility in this regard. And perhaps that superficiality to her debate style that is consistent across her policy positions as a presidential candidate, but there's something more surprising that came up in this conversation with Tulsi Gabbard, revealing to Dana Bash that she's been put on a terror watch list. Take a look at this before I tell you some details I dug up on it.
I remember in 2020, you attacked Harris for being too aggressive as a prosecutor, which is the opposite from what Donald Trump is saying about her as weak on crime. So which is it?
What I pointed out in that debate stage in the 2020 campaign was her hypocrisy. It was how she was saying one thing and doing another, how she was prosecuting people for smoking marijuana and laughing about it when she was asked about it on a radio show. And I think this goes to the heart of many of these different issues that we're seeing now that Kamala Harris is trying to hide from voters, is how she says her position is one thing, but her actions and her record show exactly the opposite. And you can point to that on issues related to the economy, issues related to freedom of speech. She says she stands for freedom of speech. And yet, as we've seen time and time again, her and Joe Biden have taken actions both directly and indirectly to censor free speech. Most recently, I can point to my own experience of this, of how the Harris-Biden administration have added me to a secret domestic terror watch list the very day after Kamala Harris was endorsed by Joe Biden. And I was on TV and warning the American people about what I saw as the dangers of a Kamala Harris presidency, taking action that was clearly political retaliation. They've done this to a lot of different people, which points to how dangerous it is to have people in power so willing to abuse that power to go after political opponents.
That is intriguing because the terror watch list she alleges being put on is under a program called Quiet Skies, where TSA agents at the airport flag people that look suspicious, sweat too much, or make bathroom visits too frequently. That makes sense from a security standpoint, but how does one allegedly get on a list like this beforehand? And if this is indeed political victimization, as Tulsi claims, how bad does it look for the state of our politics, considering Tulsi Gabbard is a veteran herself who survived the country in wartime? Republican representative from Tennessee Tim Burchett even wrote a letter to the head of TSA asking for clarification on the matter in a meeting, saying in part, quote, "I write to you today regarding a report concerning former Congresswoman and presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard. I've been told Ms. Gabbard has been placed on a Transportation Security Administration watch list under a program known as Quiet Skies. I find this profoundly troubling for a number of reasons. I request a meeting with either yourself or the individual at TSA in charge of overseeing the Quiet Skies program." We'll have to see what comes up in the next few weeks because the state of polarization in our politics does seem to be spilling over into different spheres, even those that shouldn't be political. Here's another example of that, with Dana Bash pretending to be offended over Donald Trump posting a non-political video of himself at the Arlington National Cemetery.
Very clear that the former president was invited in his personal capacity, as you said, by a family of one of the service members who was killed about 2 years ago during the withdrawal from Afghanistan.
It was 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
3 years ago to the day on
me.
August 26th.
Yes, 3 years ago. The question is about the federal law and Arlington's rules that prohibit partisan or political activities at national cemeteries. And the military and also other members of other families who are buried right near there are upset about the campaign filming it and posting the video online. Do you believe that was appropriate?
You know, I checked with the campaign on this question, and they have exchanges with the officials at Arlington Cemetery. They were approved to bring a camera there to document this historic and momentous day that should not be forgotten by any American. And to have a former president there and joining these Gold Star families, I know President Trump wanted to share that with others, especially given the fact that President Biden and Harris, I heard, were invited by some of these family members. They not only didn't come, they didn't even respond to that invitation. And now to have Kamala Harris put this statement out yesterday saying that she stands with these families, she stands with the military and with veterans, you only have to look at the response that came from the Gold Star families of these 13 service members, of how offended they were by that statement, given she has not made any effort, not on that third anniversary or any other time, to call them directly to offer her condolences and even apologies for their decisions that led to the loss of their loved ones.
If you look at this actual clip in question that was posted on Trump's TikTok, there's nothing remotely political about the post or the caption that read. To top it off, Donald Trump was in fact invited by the Gold Star families in a private capacity, and they've said that the Trump campaign was allowed to shoot pictures and videos. That's in addition to the fact that videos and pictures at such an event are captured anyway, which just goes to show the extent to which a non-political event honoring Americans' fallen soldiers can become a victim of the political polarization that we see today. Donald Trump posted a Truth Social after the event dismissing allegations that a physical altercation took place at the event. He wrote in part, quote, "There was no conflict or fighting at Arlington National Cemetery last week. It was a made-up story by Comrade Kamala and her misinfo squad." But as he consolidates a solid team around him, it's interesting how his advisors, including Tulsi Gabbard, are shaping up a slightly different style of communication for Trump. One that can be somber and subtle when it needs to be, like we saw in the debate, but can be very fiery on social media to respond to something like this. Tulsi Gabbard's probably one of the few important people that can be expected to see serving in a future Trump presidency, likely as part of the transition team.
You said in an interview this week that you were interested in serving in a Trump administration, potentially as Secretary of State, maybe Secretary of Defense. Have you discussed that with Donald Trump directly?
No, I haven't. It's important for us right now to point out the difference between Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump, what kind of president and commander-in-chief they would be. And really the leading concern that I have is about this, about the contrast between their positions and their records, and the fact that as we sit here today, President Biden and Kamala Harris have us embroiled in wars in 3 different regions of the world, have us closer to the brink of World War III and nuclear war now than ever before, according to the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists. And this should be of concern not just to Republicans and Democrats, it should be a concern to all Americans, because what's at question is our ability to have a future and to live in a free society where we can be peaceful and prosperous. This is personal for me, as it should be personal for all Americans, because it is our future that's on the line here in this decision that we as voters have to make about who we want our commander-in-chief to be.
And that's why it's shaping up to be an interesting campaign. If successful, it's that with the addition of people not previously supportive of Donald Trump finally jumping aboard the Trump train. That includes Tulsi Gabbard, but also people like RFK Jr. and Elon Musk. Let me know in the comments how you see the next 2 months turning out, because the election cycle is becoming more interesting by the passing day.